A fundamental change to criminal justice took effect on January 1st. We discussed the importance of these changes with New Jersey's first Hispanic assignment judge, the Honorable Julio Mendez. On the topic of immigration, it's hard to distinguish between facts, rumors, and speculations. Jorge Coombs helps to shed light on the subject. It's all here on the next Latino Motion. Join us.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation, and Stockton University. This edition of Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is brought to you by the HD Studios at the campus of Stockton University. Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas. Welcome to Latino Motion, a weekly interview show highlighting issues impacting New Jersey's Latino community while advancing understanding of Latino cultural heritage and contributions to our society. And here is your host, Bert Lopez.
Buenos dias and welcome to Latino Motion. The Honorable Julio Mendez is a distinguished member of the New Jersey Judiciary who happens to be the first Hispanic assignment judge for Superior Court in the state of New Jersey and is currently presiding over Atlantic and Cape May counties. I'm honored to have Judge Mendez here joining us to discuss criminal justice reform. Judge Mendez, welcome to Latino Motion.
Welcome. Very, very pleased to be here with you.
I'm honored to have you, and certainly it's a big accomplishment to have a Latino serving in this role, and the very first, like I mentioned, in New Jersey. Congratulations, and tell me a little bit about how you got started.
Thank you. Well, I graduated high school from Vineland High in Vineland, and then attended Rowan University and Rutgers Law School, and became a lawyer in 1981, and practiced law for about 20 years in Cumberland County and Atlantic County, and then became a judge in 2002.
So you're local, and you managed to stay local and serve in this role, which is a great accomplishment.
Yes, I serve in the Cumberland, Gloucester, Salem vicinage for about 9 years, and I have been in Atlantic County and Cape May County now for about 5.5 years as assignment judge.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about criminal justice reform. What we're talking here in terms of diversity in the judiciary is very important. This kind of plays a little bit into it because there was a bit of disparity, if you will, with minority defendants in the court system. And this reform is helping to kind of level the playing field. Tell me a little bit about this reform.
Well, it is a monumental change in the way criminal justice laws have been implemented, particularly as it relates to the processing of pre-adjudication defendants, the determination of how those defendants remain incarcerated or released, what kind of pretrial review process they have to go into, and ultimately there's a speedy trial component to it. So it's a fundamental change to the law that came into effect January 1st of 2017.
So this was through legislation, and I remember
legislation that was enacted with bipartisan support, support of the governor, support of course, the Chief Justice led a committee that developed the principles that ultimately became part of the law, and we are now implementing that law. The fundamental principle is that people should not be incarcerated because they are poor. They should be incarcerated because they're a risk to society. So that's one aspect of it, and an important one. As a result of that, the anticipation is that there will be less people that will remain incarcerated with the implementation of this law. And I can give you some examples. For example, someone that had $2,500 bail and could not afford to pay it will remain incarcerated for a long time until that bail was posted or the case was adjudicated. Under the news,
in many cases, that adjudication took a lot longer than it would under this reform.
And at times, they served their time even before the case was completed. under the new concept of criminal justice reform, the bail concept, the bail has been eliminated, and people now, someone like that who would be low risk will be released with conditions at times, but we release, and there will be no adjudication incarceration for that individual.
And just going back to the problem itself, I know that within the Latino community and African American community, this was a big deal. And I remember when this was introduced, that with the signing, I believe the members of the NAACP were present. It was a big deal, a big accomplishment, because it was unduly impacting the minority community at the time.
It is, and what is interesting is that this is the type of law that gather bipartisan support. You have people on both sides of the aisle supporting it because it's the right thing to do. People should not remain incarcerated just because they're poor. They should be remaining incarcerated because they are a risk to society. So it took a tremendous effort putting this together. We're still in the midst of it. It's not a perfect system, but it's a better system in my view. That will result in high-risk individuals remaining incarcerated, as they should, but low-risk individuals that cannot post bail because they were poor, now those individuals will be released.
So here we are at the end of February, so it's only been active for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
And
yes.
How is it going?
Well, I think it's generally going well. There are bumps on the road like everything else, but it's going well. I think, for example, in Atlantic County, our pretrial or pre-adjudication incarceration rates are down about 30%. So we compare a year ago how many people were incarcerated awaiting trial versus now. So it says 30% less individuals being incarcerated. Statewide is about the same numbers. It is making a difference. So those individuals that are now in the community and supposed to be incarcerated, they don't lose their jobs, they don't lose housing, they don't lose custody to their children. So there's a collateral impact that is tremendous. And
so the bail reform was the big piece of this. That was the driver.
The bail reform is a very important component of it, yes. Then there's a speedy trial component of it, and there's a pretrial services unit that has been developed within the court system. And we've been working at this for the last year and a half to put it together. There's also an objective tool that evaluates risk, and that tool is utilized with every defendant once they're arrested and charged with an offense, and then that information is provided to the court, so the court can make a determination whether that individual is a low risk or a high risk under that tool, and make a determination whether that person should be released or not.
I want to explore this a little deeper and also talk about the speedy trial component a little more in depth. We want to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. We're continuing our discussion with the Honorable Julio Mendez, assignment judge for Superior Court in Atlantic and Cape May counties. And Judge, we were talking about the criminal justice reform. We talked about the bail, very important piece of this, and there's also the speedy trial component. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the speedy trial component is an effort to move cases within the court system in an expeditious way. So it forces the timelines to be completed for a case to be completed within certain timelines. So once an individual is charged, the prosecutor has timeline from the time of the arrest to the time of indictment. So it's 90 days. So the case cannot linger there for many months. So its action needs to take place within that time. After the indictment to the time of trial, there's also another timeline, 180 days. So again, the defendants that are waiting for their day in court, these cases are going to proceed very expeditiously through the system. Likewise, the victims that are waiting for their justice to be done on a particular case, they don't have to wait around for that to take place for years. The cases are moving through the system very expeditiously, and ultimately there's an overall timeline of 2 years. The case needs to be completed from the time of individual is charged with a crime to the time that the case is completed.
So there's always been the criticism that the judicial system moves very slowly, and now that you're speeding up that, how are you managed to do that within those timelines unless you expanded the system?
And there are challenges in doing this. There are definite challenges. There are challenges for our stakeholders. We have the prosecutor's office, the Office of the Public Defender. Resources is a challenge. The county has some challenges associated with that as well. So, but on the other, but the bottom line is that we have all worked together, and this process began with all the stakeholders working together, trying to put together a new system for New Jersey. We are a model in the nation right now. Everybody's looking at what New Jersey is doing with criminal justice reform and how we're implementing this new system that assesses risk on the front end, that emphasizes release of low risk defendants, that accelerates the process of moving these cases through the system, the speedy trial component, and that we've also created a pretrial services unit within the court system.
So the pretrial services, this is for those individuals that have gotten the bail,
right,
are waiting for that speedy trial,
yeah,
and then there's these services that are provided.
And it's not bail, it's release. They have been released because there's no bail system under criminal justice reform in New Jersey any longer.
Okay.
So the individuals are released, and they're released with some conditions at times, and those conditions are then supervised and reviewed and followed through by the pretrial services unit. For example, a low-risk individual may be asked to call his or her caseworker every week, or may be available, maybe call to their home. A higher risk individual may have an electronic monitoring device, and be within a certain area. So all of that is supervised by the pretrial services unit.
Let's talk a little bit about for the defendants. You've been charged. What are the main things that the defendant should keep in mind about this new process?
Yeah. Well, first of all, by the way, law enforcement is very much on board. Prosecutor's office has been on board in terms of the implementation. They've committed to it. The first important decision that is made in every case is, do you charge this defendant with a summons, or you charge the defendant with a warrant? If you charge with a warrant, then the person is incarcerated, and the person is entitled to an immediate hearing within 48 hours, and we bring that person in for an immediate hearing before a municipal court judge that serves in this capacity, sitting in Mays Landing, in Atlantic County, and in Cape May as well. Then after that, there's a determination by the prosecutor, do they want to detain this individual? If they wish to detain, then they have to file a motion for the detention hearing, and then there's a hearing before the Superior Court judge. And then there's a determination whether that individual remains incarcerated or released. And the goal is to release low-level, low-risk individuals into the community as part of this program, and to keep high-risk individuals incarcerated without access to bail. So not only this required legislation passing by the bipartisan support by the Senate, Assembly, and the governor, but also it required a constitutional amendment that the citizens of New Jersey voted for, and they voted to make these changes as well.
Well, very happy to see these reforms are taking place, and certainly congratulations to you on being the first Latino Hispanic assignment judge in the state. It's a great honor to have you here on Latino Motion.
Happy to be here in your program and at Stockton University.
Thank you. And stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Latino Motion.
Latino Motion with Bert Lopez is presented by Latino Motion Public Affairs Media, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. Join us online at www.latinomotion.tv. Find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We encourage your comments and contributions for show topics.
Welcome back to Latino Motion. In the immigrant community, fear dominates the discussion on immigration. It has become increasingly harder to distinguish between facts, rumors, and speculations. Joining me to shed some light on the subject of immigration is local attorney Jorge Coombs. Jorge, welcome to Latino Motion.
Thanks, Bert. Nice to be back.
Nice to have you back here again, once again on the show to talk about this very important topic of immigration. And I know we're here on a Tuesday just before the presidential address, which could be a game changer in terms of immigration. But tell me, what do we know so far?
Well, one of the things we do know is that there were a series of memorandum that came out a couple weeks ago by Kelly, who is the acting Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And what those memoranda did is they said for internal enforcement and border enforcement, all other memoranda are no longer to be recognized. So all other executive orders regarding immigration, policy memoranda, enforcement tips, and so forth, gone. What's interesting, though, is in one of those memoranda, the DACA program, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals that started in 2012 under Obama, not touched. Also, the November 2014 executive order regarding DAPA, which is for parents of children born in the United States or lawful permanent residents in the United States, which died in front of the Supreme Court, that also wasn't touched. But everything else, gone.
So we know there's a lot of fear in the community. We had a situation in Pleasantville, for example, that they were looking, ICE was looking for a particular individual, went to the house. The people in that household had just moved in 3 months ago, so they weren't looking for anyone in the household. Luckily, the warrant was for them. They didn't open the door, but if they had, those individuals who were undocumented could have been detained.
Look, again, they're enforcing the immigration laws as we've essentially had them since 1996. If they're looking for someone who has a criminal record in addition to having an immigration case open, there may be collateral damage, or they may detain other people who can't provide proper documentation. My advice to people, if you have an immigration case present and active, have ID, valid ID from your country, and then copies of your next hearing notice before the immigration court. If you have any petitions pending with immigration, have a copy of those immigration receipts. That might inform an officer that, yeah, your status isn't quite settled, but you're working to do something about it.
Now, obviously, if you have documentation that is not valid, what should you do?
You shouldn't have it. Quite simple. If you have fake ID, if you have somebody else's social security number, if you have even a fake driver's license, but particularly fake social security card is a federal offense, and it could be used against you, not only in New Jersey courts, but in your immigration case.
Let's talk a little bit about the enforcement. Obviously, we've heard a lot of rumors about raids taking place. Is that truly the case?
I have heard those same rumors, and as far as I know, typically they are looking for a handful of individuals, and what happens is in the sweep, panic sets in, people start texting, and what is starts as 2 or 3 individuals turns into, I don't know if you heard about this, a helicopter on the roof of a house in Ventnor, and 50 people being taken away in a bus. I don't believe that to be true. But are the laws being enforced? Absolutely. And what is interesting is regarding enforcement priorities, they can also now look for individuals who have been charged with a crime but not been convicted of a crime. And that creates its own set of issues with regards to due process issues. If you're deporting someone who has a pending case and hasn't pled guilty or been found guilty, that deprives the individual of the opportunity to defend that case.
We just had Judge Mendez here talking about criminal reform. How important is it for us to be aware and basically certainly want to stay in the straight and narrow, so to speak, but if you're somehow charged, what are some of the things you should be considering?
Well, as the judge touched on, New Jersey's on the cutting edge of these reforms, these bail reforms in particular. And one of the issues that I have is, especially if you're undocumented, the vast difference that you can have whether you're charged under a warrant. If you're charged under a warrant, you can be jailed. And that call is being made at the street level by law enforcement. Training is going on, but these are early days, and it can significantly change someone's not only criminal case, because they may not be able to fully resolve it, but it may have huge impact on their ability to stay, because it could put them in the hands of immigration and customs enforcement.
What advice do you give those individuals that are undocumented? I see.
Keep your nose clean. Don't commit crimes. Don't meet with criminals. Don't hang out with people in areas where there's high levels of criminal activity. Now, sometimes it's just bad luck. But
the other token of that is the fact that there's many people taking advantage of that fear. And certainly, if you have a lawyer, make sure you still stay with the lawyer. But obviously, you don't want to be seduced, if you will, into a quick fix or the help. Jorge, thank you so much for sharing this information. I'm sure you'll be back here to talk about some new updates, particularly after the presidential
maybe sooner
address.
rather than later. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us at home once again here on Latino Motion.
Choose quality, value, distinction. Choose Stockton.
Funding for Latino Motion is provided by Atlanticare, healthcare you can believe in. Atlantic City Electric, energy for a changing world. And South Jersey Gas.